What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our weekly live stream, this time for the Honda Classic. I'm absolutely stoked, looking forward to it. Already have my lineups in, which is a change, because typically I wait until after the streams to go out there and get my actual exposure in, but we got them in early. We're excited. Got some extra content out this week. Was able to walk the course this morning, take a look at conditions, watch the range for a solid 4 hours. I just sat there on the range, sipping on some seltzers. And the lady at the concession stand there, ended up knowing her. She actually one of the moms of one of my friends I played soccer with. So I ended up getting a bunch of free booze and food. So just hunkered down there. Watched Will Gordon stripe a few balls. Watched Benny Ann. He had guys like SH Kim out there. It felt like our entire player pool was just sitting in front of me hitting balls. And I vetted them, right? We made sure that they were striping it out there, hitting the ball okay. And for the most part, at least the guys that I was seeing out there, they looked to be pretty sharp. So it was windy out there. The conditions probably going to be a little bit easier for tomorrow. It was whipping like 20, 25 miles an hour. So I'm not looking into the play that much, but still, it was great to get an eye on the Honda. We'll talk about all of the specifics here in a little bit when it comes to potential changes from last year to this year. But first off, just welcome in. Going to go through everything you need to know for this week, whether it's for DFS, the prop side, all of your questions, everything right before lock that needs to be on your checklist, right? So we'll start with a look at the course, the weather for this week, whether there's going to be an edge for the props or for DFS potentially. And from the weather perspective, I'll tell you that there doesn't look like there's going to be any edges to be had, but still your average windy day there on Thursday. So conditions are going to be tough tomorrow. And then, of course, all of your questions. So welcome in. Love that everyone's down here. GameCube down there. David Dulock, what's going on? Just love to be a help out there. So love that you're getting into golf now. That's sweet. Robert says it's Sun Kang week. Okay. You're pretty new to golf DFS, but you didn't do all that well. Missing the cut for you. Yeah. Hey, if you're new to golf, that's one thing, man. Getting guys through the cut is difficult. I mean, you're going to see averages of like 1 to 5%, 6 of 6 rates. So don't feel like it's just you, right? They can't get everyone through the cut line. You're looking at maybe I'd say 10% is like on the high mark. If a lot of the chalk ends up making the cut, is going to be what the field's getting 6 of 6 through. So don't feel like you're an outsider there. If you're new to it, it's pretty tough, right? If you're running a bunch of lineups, you should have a few with 6 of 6. But don't feel like you got to get everyone through. Robert says, how did Ann and SH Kim look? They were hitting the ball okay. SH was hitting a lot of driver. He only started to hit wedges towards the end, and he was out there for like 3 hours. So it was strange that he was hitting ball for 3 hours, first off. Second off, it was weird how much he was hitting driver. So it looked like he was hitting it well. I mean, he was striping it. It was going dead straight. And there was a huge wind out there. So he was keeping it online, which was relatively impressive to me at the very least. But he was literally just banging driver after driver. So that was slightly strange, I'll say that. Other players, right, were like cycling between clubs. Like Will Gordon was changing club about every like 10 swings. SH Kim had the driver in hand for at least 2 hours. It was a little strange. What a legend. Friend's mom hooking it up. Yeah, I know a lot of people that are working there. My mom's has a lot of her coworkers that are executives that'll be on site all week. So I have a few hookups, that's for sure. Matt says nothing better than some golf and a couple cold ones for sure. Especially when it was as laid back as it was today. No one was there. So I could sit on the range. You got all these world-class players in front of me. And I say world-class, right? We've got a shitty field, but you're still talking about PGA Tour regulars out there. Like, to me, Will Gordon, he's a young up-and-coming stud. So, I just wanted to sit there and watch him hit iron shots. And there's a few guys, Will Gordon in particular, that you could just literally sit there and watch the guy hit 9 irons all day. The ball comes off differently. It sounds different when it comes off his club face. Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun. Great content. You watch all your videos most of the times. Great. Yeah, there's a lot that comes out, so it's hard to catch all of it. I said, is there an intermediate rough? What distance are players hitting it out of the rough? The rough isn't substantial, so yeah, let's bring up the golf course. Let's just hop right into it. Great segue question here. The rough is pretty much non-existent. That's always been the case at the Honda. There's going to be a few spots where it's like maybe 1.5, 2 inches, but when I was walking around today, a majority of it was like 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Essentially non-existent, right? It's Bermuda, so it tends to be a little bit stickier than most, but it felt like the only real rough patches were like next to trees where you can tell that the mowers weren't able to get all that close. Close to like concession stands, up on the hills in between holes. There's a few mounds in between holes, particularly there on the front nine. those were the only spots with the rough. So a few people were commenting that they saw videos online of the rough being substantial, like in tiny spots, sure. But like for 95, maybe even like 98% of the property, it's like half an inch to an inch long. So that's kind of on par with what you see at this course. It's typically not known for having that juicy rough. I mean, if you had like 2-3 inch Bermuda grass rough around here, I think the scoring average might be like 4 or 5 over par. Like it just wouldn't be playable. So great question. Yeah, rough's not a really big issue. Off the tee, I feel like is essentially non-existent here because like you can hit driving iron or 3-wood off every single tee, have at most like a 6-iron in, at least on like the reasonable par fours, like hole number 10, right, is like 500 yards. That's a different story. You got to hit driver there. But for a good amount of the holes, like off the tee for me, at least, especially from what I was seeing today, I don't know if I'm weighting it very much at all. Like driving distance is great to have, but it's not going to be in my top 5 key stats. I've adjusted things quite a bit. David says you're not a quitter. You run 4 to 6 lineups. Yeah, so if you're running 4 to 6, getting one through on a week-to-week basis, you should be satisfied with. You shouldn't feel great about it, right? I mean, you want to do a little bit better, right? Ideally, you want to crush the field when it comes to some of the metrics. But yeah, if you get one through, you got to feel pretty good about that. So just maybe adjust your expectations. I know you're not a quitter. Damon says something about your stream starting and whole locations getting posted. Yeah, maybe they're timing it up on purpose to get my thoughts on it. So yeah, we'll definitely look at them. I'm interested to see hole 18 because it did take a few overs over there on Prize Picks. And if you get the tough pin, that's going to be an absolute gold mine, but they did take the category down. So unless you hammered it early, you're not going to have access to it. Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued to see that. So we'll bring it up. Nick says, you heard it's going to be full moon, could affect Ben Griffin and his zodiac sign. I love it, Nick. Good old inside joke there. Yeah, I heard that he's going to peak on Sunday is what I heard too. Neil says, hey guys, what's going on, Neil? David says, love it. Don't forget to hit that like button. I love it. When people do the plugs for me, it makes the show so much easier. Love to see it. Reed says, what players are you most confident to make the cut? Well, Reed, if I give you that answer, these players are 100% going to miss the cut because I think if you're looking to try and do a make the cut parlay this week, that sort of thing, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But the answer is Aaron Wise. He's probably the most likely to make the cut there, but no one in this field is a for sure cut maker. I know a few guys are at like minus, I think Sanjay was like minus 700 to make the cut or something just ridiculous there. That is the most egregious line I think I've ever seen. So I would not be betting that market. I think it's oversaturated because though there's value likely to be had, especially in that mid-tier range, there's so much volatility that if you're running one of those parlays, which is I know why a lot of people are asking that question, maybe you're not, maybe it's for DFS. If you're doing a parlay with that, I would just heavily advise against it. If you're talking about for DFS reasons, right, to try and get some cut makers, look at course history, right? Try and find a few of the guys that have had a good track record. Like Johnny Vegas has made a bunch of cuts here. He comes to mind when I think of that. Chris Kirk has not been that consistent. So despite having a few top end finishes, he's not really that consistent player you're looking for. So I would look at course history for that if you're trying to talk from the DFS perspective to potentially play a few cash guys this week. But it's a really tough cash week. I have to say that. I think Sanjay Im you have to play in cash. I think there's no doubt about it. Right? If you're playing in that kind of contest, you should have Sanjay Im, potentially even Shane Lowry. Like the optimal might be to take Sanjay and Shane Lowry. If not Lowry, right? It's Sanjay then Aaron Wise as your second man in. If you want to be a little bit more balanced about it. In cash, I think the top of your lineup is relatively straightforward, but the rest of your lineup is going to be a lot of fun. I just realized I was going through my player pool over there and you guys couldn't see anything I was talking about. I was like moving my cursor and whatnot. Little brain fart here. Again, hey, I walked the course today. We're having fun out there. Harry Hall, I think he's a good flyer pick. He's the kind of guy who has the upside in this field, right? In stronger fields, we've seen him finish top 20 before. I'm personally not there, Chris. I kind of wish I was. You can't play everyone in the field. My lineups, I have, I think, 439 players actually in my set of 150 lineups. I have a few single entries where I have in a few other players mixed in. But yeah, Harry Hall's not one of those. So, hey, I wish you could play like 60, 70 guys in your pool because if I could, he would be there. But hey, I think he's a high upside pick. I like it. Hole 18 location is pinned on the water. Perfect. That's all I got to say. Perfect. We're going to look at the pin locations here because we can. We'll take like 30 seconds to look at them, but that is just perfect. Great to know. There's not going to be many birdies is what that means. Everyone's going to lay up. So it's like probably going to be like a 25 to 30% birdie rate. That's fantastic. David says you don't have prize picks because you live in Maine, but cut makers, yes. Yeah. So if you're looking for just like the make the cut kind of parlays there, look at course history. Guys that have made the cut, let's say 3 or 4 out of their last 5 starts, you want to look at. I would say that guys that have no course history, I don't want to say you can't play them, but you don't have that to go off of. So it might be a little bit more risky. Anointed says, so the players are not only clubbing down to stay out of the water. Shots gained is what they gained per round. So yeah, any metric that you see on a database, especially on mine, is going to be per round. So if somebody is like 0.56 shots gained approach, that's per round. So over an event, that would be times 4. But yeah, a lot of people are going to be clubbing down. So to answer the first question there, I would imagine that 3-wood is hit by most players. I'd say on at least half their holes, if not more than that. There's going to be a bunch of tee shots that have forced layups where you have to hit an iron off the tee. Doc Redman, right, who's not one of the longer players on tour, was hitting 3-wood on a 450-yard hole. So if that tells you anything, right? Like they're going to prioritize the accuracy over the distance here because of all the water that's out there. And then when you add in the fact that the rough is essentially non-existent, I think that you're going to see a lot of 3-woods because if you end up missing the fairway with the 3-wood, right, it's not like you're hitting at a 2-inch rough where maybe you're 50 yards back. Now you're in the rough too. You're screwed going into the green. It's like you're hitting out of the fairway. So if you're short, right? There's not really going to be that difference in penalty there. So maybe guys take more 3-woods. I saw a bunch of them out there. Essentially every tee shot that I saw, I wasn't on hole 10. I wasn't on hole 3, the par 5, right? Those are the 2 obvious holes where guys are going to take driver. But like every other hole, people were hitting 3-wood. Robbie says, anyone you like in that same Harry Hall range? Good question. So we'll get into the player-by-player analysis here in a little bit. Speaking of, let's go through this golf course. So we'll get to the player poll later, guys. We'll get to all your questions. But we have some business to handle beforehand. So when it comes to the course, I talked about the rough. Let's talk about the greens. They were average firmness. They weren't receptive, but they weren't rock hard. So the reaction for most balls was to hit and then release about 2-3 yards. And the green speeds, they looked a little slower than most years. Now, they might cut them. They might roll them overnight. So it's hard to say how it's going to play tomorrow morning. The reason I say that is they had the Pro-Am today, right? So pin locations were in the center of every green. Maybe they made it slightly more receptive to try and cater towards the Pro-Am guests. But if they go out there, they roll the greens, they cut them, that sort of thing. I mean, they can make them a lot faster. They look to be running right around 12s. Now, in the past, we've seen them run at 12.5, 13s on the stint meter. I mean, last year, they were definitely running at 13s by the end of the week. So I would expect them to speed up. Maybe they don't get the whole way to 13 just because they did look closer to 12s today. But really, it was your average PGA National. Like the rough looked the same, pretty much non-existent. The greens were kind of firm. They were kind of fast to start the week, and the fairways were firm as well. Pretty much like the greens, right? They're not receptive, right? You're not going to hit a drive and it's not going to hold, but it's also not going to roll out 30 yards. So in Florida, if you guys haven't played down here before, the soil tends to be a lot softer. So even when it's not raining, it's a lot more receptive than what you see over there on the West Coast. So while over the last few weeks, you've had players that get 30, 40 yards of rollout, it's going to be closer to, let's say, 5 to 15 yards down here in Florida, right? Depending on how high you hit the golf ball, how spinny you're hitting a drive, so on and so forth. So just your average Honda Classic conditions. So when we're looking at last year, this plus 1.34 scoring average, I think it's a solid barometer. I don't think we need to change very much because last year it wasn't super receptive, right? There wasn't a ton of rain that came in beforehand. Now it was a little bit wetter, right? It was a little bit more precipitation that week than what you had for this time around, but I would expect a driving accuracy, right, close to 68%, and a green and regulation percentage probably between, let's say, like the 55 to 60% range. I do think that the green and regulation percentage might be a little bit lower, just because here on Data Golf, you just have to keep this in mind. They include the fringe and intermediate as a green. So their averages are always off, right? When you look at the Fantasy National averages, you look at ESPN, you look at some of the tracking they've done over the years, the average is closer to 60%, if not closer to 58% most years. So that's the one category that I think might be the most misleading when it comes to data golf is a lot of people are pulling these numbers to try and use them for their prop analysis, not realizing that they're slightly off because of the way that data golf tracks those sort of stats. And of course, on Prize Picks, if you guys aren't familiar, they do not count the fringe or intermediate cut as a green on Prize Picks that they do over here. So keep that in mind. In terms of your weather, not a huge weather advantage. At least it doesn't look like it. You have slightly gustier winds tomorrow morning, but if you go over here to the regular forecast, you look at a lot of the other weather sites down here in Florida, they're not calling for gusty conditions tomorrow morning, and they're not calling for rain. In fact, all of the forecasts that I've checked do not call for rain tomorrow morning. So this super forecast down here, I think, is full of shit. Okay, I just put it on the record, because look over here at Willy Weather, right? Something that I think has been a little bit more consistent over the years. Right? They have the winds much lower in the morning than they are in the afternoon, right about like a 4 or 5 miles an hour difference. And then on Friday, the same kind of thing. And that's what you see in Florida. It's typically always calm in the morning. And then in the afternoon, it gets slightly gusty. That's just how it works down here. So like I said, from the weather perspective, from how firm and fast the course is, I don't think there's going to be much difference this year based on what we've seen in the last 2, 3, even 4 years at this point. The weather has been extremely consistent for this event. Now, I say that it was consistent last year until literally hole 72, right? Until you had guys like Shane Lowry finishing up Daniel Berger there. They were the only guys that caught out by that, by the way. And that was the only set of bad weather that entire week. So again, I think if we're looking at last year's stats, we can learn a lot from it. And when looking at the wind, I mean, here on Friday, right, it's even relatively flat. It's always going to be easier to play in the morning than the afternoon. So if you wanted to perhaps take a chance, let's say, because you can see in the morning, right, there's 13 mile an hour wind gusts. The sustained winds, again, just I think this super forecast might be drastically off, are literally the exact same across the board. So if you're going to find a micro edge, maybe you target the guys that are PM AM, because during the first day of play, it looks like it might be literally the same conditions the entire day, same wind direction, same intensity, so on and so forth. But on Friday, it does look a little bit calmer than the afternoon. So if you were going to try and break a tie, wanted to use the weather to try and do so, then maybe you take the PM AM guys. But at least for me, I have not made any decisions based on that. And again, you would just be, if you absolutely had to break a tiebreaker, you could use that, but I just wouldn't recommend it. Other than that, let's go over to the player poll now, start to get into some of those questions that I know we had before. I know Robbie had a question that we're going to hop into to start this off. So Robbie says, anyone you like in that same Harry Hall range? So Harry Hall, relatively cheap. A lot of that's due to his recent play. And down here in this range, yeah, so I'd say Grayson Sig. So he's $100 more expensive. So I don't know if you have the $100 to spend, or if you were just talking in general about the sort of plays you're looking to get to. But yeah, like a Grayson Sig, he's just a better player than his peers. We saw during the fall swing, we saw during the latter half of last season, the kind of player that he is. He was consistently making cuts. He was posting top 25 finishes from time to time. And a top 25 in your, standard PGA Tour field is probably a top 10 or even a top 5 in this field. So those consistent players, Eric Cole comes to mind for that same reason. Those kind of guys I'm looking to get to more than most, because their consistent performances week on, week out are going to be worth a lot more this week, right? Because the field is weaker. They don't have to do nearly as much to finish in the top 15, top 10. And that matters. So yeah, I like Grayson Sig a lot there. We're going to talk about him a little bit more later too, but you can see his ownership. He's only about 5% owned. So definitely not chalk. Matt says, when you get to Prize Picks, do you still like the fades on greens of regulation? Yeah, well, actually, after the line changes, I wouldn't touch them, right? Like if you couldn't get them at 11.5, I wouldn't force him to bet. I would never recommend that. Anytime I bet something, right, you're talking about 5-10% edges typically, right? When it's coming to my modeling, and something's moving 0.5, usually that's more than a 5-10% swing. Normally it's like an 11-12% swing. So unless you're looking at like a 75 to 80% hit rate before, you're likely looking at a prop that's a lot closer to a coin flip than you'd like. So I always recommend to stay away, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's just the edges, the changes in terms of hit rate, I think are a lot larger than people realize. Now with greens regulation strokes, it's a little bit less impactful, but especially like when it's birdies or better, you're talking about massive swings in terms of your expected value. Anointed says, from your course preview, it sounds like there's a small landing area on greens. There is, yeah, there's a lot of landing areas where, chipping hollows come into play. I think just most of the greens in general are raised up like 3-4 yards, I'd say. It's not like you're hitting uphill into every single green, but for drainage purposes, they have everything perched up a little bit, which means that when you're missing greens, right, the chip shots are relatively difficult because it's harder to get the ball to stop softly. So yeah, that's a thing. That's for sure. Brian says, what's your favorite play in underdog? Birdies are better, bogeys are worse. So honestly, my favorite plays over there all ended up getting bumped. The things that are left, I'd say the par 3 scoring stuff, the ones that they have at 12. So the ones at 12.5, I'd probably avoid, but all of the par 3s play over par. Now, a lot depends on wind direction. If you get the opposite wind of what we got today, actually, I want to look at that on Wind Finder. So today the wind, so it's going to go the same direction. I have to say this wind direction is slightly helpful for the par 3s. So that's not the best for it, but even so, like this is your predominant wind direction. And last year, all 3 played over par. So in terms of my top props over there, let me find them. Like Aaron Wise, I'd probably avoid. He's one of the better par 3 players, but like a Lowry I'd take for the over. I love Billy Ho this week, but I'd still take his over. Denny McCarthy I took. Do they have Norn? Yeah, that's right. Norn withdrew. So you can't take Norn, obviously. I was about to say I'll take good old Alex Norn, but I had Chris Kirk, but they bumped him to 12.5. Even Pendrith down here, right? Now, Pendrith's one of the better par 3 players on tour. I was doing some research looking at last year's stats, and Pendrith was like top 20 on tour, but that stat is extremely flawed, right? So like these are the guys that are left. They're not my favorite options. There was a lot better guys at 12 that you could have taken. Sorry, I have the other tab up again. I'm doing this again. We're going to get into the props a little bit later, but it would be like these kind of guys. Okay. Like Lowry, Horschel, McCarthy, and Pendrith. But there were guys that were better on the board before. So I didn't play any of those guys myself, just to be fully transparent there. Let's hop back into the player poll. Again, we're going to talk about props later. So try and hold all your prop questions to the end of the stream. Oak says, you made your plays the past 2 days, and now today it says 10 players were added to the field. Would you review some plays or not? So you're talking about like your DFS poll. Yeah, there were guys that were withdrawals that were added late. I haven't played any of the late ads. They're all kind of like lower quality players. I think the most expensive one was like $6,400. And 2 of the players weren't even added to the player poll. That was Chappell and Grayson Murray. They were added so late to the event that DraftKings couldn't even give them a price tag. So no, I wouldn't change anything, man. What does holes played mean? It's essentially a bet on whether somebody makes the cut. If they make the cut, they're going to play more than 36 holes. If they miss the cut, they're going to play exactly 36 holes and go under. So that's the best way to look at it, right? Is somebody going to make the cut or not? The cut is the top 65 players plus ties. They end up making it to the weekend. CB, you're betting on whether they make the cut. Perfect. Anointed says Brad Faxon on Golf Channel said the wind direction was blowing in an advantageous direction. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's for the par 3s. It was going slightly downwind. The par 5 18th was going directly into the wind, so it doesn't help there. And then on the other par 5, it's not helping either. So it's only really helping on the 2 par 3s, which are 5 and 7. Those 2 par 3s, it's going to help you out on. But hole number 6 is a converted par 5. It's a 500-yard par 4 now that also has water the entire way down the left. That plays directly into the wind, right? So it helps them out on a couple holes, but then they get completely shafted on the par 5 and get completely shafted on the hardest hole on the golf course. So there's not really an advantageous direction. I just have to say that because there's holes in every which direction around PGA National. They're all exposed. And like I said, it's going to help you out on those 2 holes. But outside of that, not so much. And there's plenty of other par 3s that are also, other par 4s, I should say, that are also going to play directly into the wind, which doesn't help. So how did beautiful Harry Higgs look today? He looked beautiful. He was waddling up the stairs at one point. I actually got a picture of it, right? I know I sent it in the Discord before you saw it, Nick. He was looking great, doing his thing. He didn't hit many balls on the range. I think he hit like 15 before he went out there and played. He's very like me in that way, that you don't need many balls to warm up. That's for damn sure. Jared says, how do you like starting a lineup in the low 9K range? I've done it a ton. So let me go up to the top here. We're going to talk through this top end range, but I'm assuming you're starting like maybe Aaron Wise. Maybe it's a Matt Kuchar that you're starting that kind of lineup with, Denny McCarthy. I don't know, right? Whoever your favorite guy in that range might be Aaron Wise, right? Core pick. Yeah, I have a lot of lineups. In fact, I don't want to give away my entire player pool, guys, but every lineup that I have starts in the 9K range. I'm not playing either of the two guys up top. I told you I'm not playing Sun GM. I'm not playing Shane Lowry either. I have no issues fading them. And in terms of combined ownership, that's boxing out at least half the field right there, right? Half the field right there. If these two don't end up getting in the optimal, I'm running home free, right? And that doesn't mean they have to miss the cut. Let's get this right? These guys are 10K golfers. They're going to have to finish top 5 to get into the optimal, right? I mean, unless all of these guys bust, right? All of the guys here from 8K plus end up busting except those two. They essentially have to finish top 5, right? I am very, very comfortable betting against that, right? Especially Sun JM, who's had a really spotty track record. I already talked about it, but Shane Lowry, before this last week resurgence, was utter dog shit, right? Everyone was kind of talking about that. Yeah, man, that literally every lineup of mine is starting that way this week. So I didn't want to give away the nuts there, but yeah, I mean, honestly, in years past, people have always like kicked themselves and said, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I just take literally all the chalk and fade all of them? And that's what I'm doing this year. I'm not going to be one of those people that says what if anymore. Let's test the theory, right? Let's see what the carnage brings. Chris says, do you see the Cootie brothers? I saw one of the two. So it's a good question, Chris. I was on the range. They look the exact same, Pearson and Parker. One of them, it was one of the two. I literally don't know which one it was. I looked up pictures and I still couldn't figure out which one that it was. Had his instructor there, his like nutrition. I don't know. He had like 4 people with him. So I don't even know who all 4 of them were. And they were all like yapping at him in his ear as he's hitting balls. And he's like looking around exasperated, looking like he's like really searching for his game. It was one of the two of them. I don't know if it was Parker. I'm not sure if it was Pearson, but they did not look good. They were probably the worst player on the range when it came to their swing. So he looked really young. I think Parker is the younger of the two. I think that's the one that got in via the Monday qualifier. Again, I'm just guessing. I think it was him. Oak says, do you use all the money? So you gotta word that better, Oak. You're screwing with me there. Do you use all your money you can on your lineups? I, for the most part, do, but I have lineups where I'm leaving up to $1,000 on the table this week. So I would say for like top end fields, when you've got elevated events like we're going to have for like the next 2 weeks after this, you probably want to avoid that. Right over the last 2 weeks, you probably wanted to spend all of your salary. But in this kind of field, I'm a lot more willing to leave that salary. And there are lineups, again, I'm leaving up to $1,000 on the table. So yeah, for the most part, I do spend all my salary, but not really this week. There's a plenty of lineups I'm leaving that salary on the table for. But let's go through this top end range. Again, Lowry, Sanjay, I'm sorry, I'm not playing you this week. In this 9K range, ownership is spread out pretty evenly. The lowest owned player, believe it or not, is Billy Horschel at 13.6%. In your highest owned player, I have both of them on here, okay, is Aaron Wise. So everyone in this range, right, from Billy Horschel the whole way down to Taylor Pendrith here, is between 13.6 and 19.8% owned. So essentially, play over the hell you want to, right? There's not got somebody that's way, way chalkier than the rest. I mean, like even Billy Horschel, if you hate him this week, it's not like you have to play him because he's a good piece of leverage, right? He's within 5% ownership of the chalkiest guy in that range. Now, if there was one guy I had to bet on to come in a little bit higher owned than I expect, it would be Aaron Wise. It feels like literally everyone is talking about him this week. And I mean, literally everybody. Every tout is like, oh, he loves it down here, so on and so forth. Like, that's not why I play him. I play him because I like the course fit. He likes hard courses. But if everyone and anyone is going to play Aaron Wise, like there's a chance that I wake up at 6 a.m. tomorrow before I go to the course and go, Aaron Wise, you're out of here. I just can't do it, right? Because I sleep on it. He's going to be 20, 25% owned potentially. And that's what I mean. Like, I think he might get to like the 25% range if I'm right about the steam that's coming in. And that would be an atrocious play. Like kind of like Sun GM, right? He's 30% owned. If it's a 25% owned Aaron Wise, like count me out. So stay tuned for that. If I end up jumping off him, I will update you guys in the Discord about that. But that's like the one uncomfortable piece of my player pool right now that I don't like so much, because essentially everyone else in my pool is 15% owned or lower. That's like kind of the cap I went with. Ben Griffin is the one guy pushing that. You can see I have him at 14.7% right now. But I don't know. I'm okay with. I told you guys like during my value picks video, anything up to right around 15%, and I'll still play him. So he's right on that border. So we're still playing him, right? In terms of your 8K range, there's a lot of leverage to be had at the lower end here. So from like Sepp Straka down to, let's say, Garrick Higgo, all of these players are super low owned. Now, Harris English, I don't know if I'd say super low owned, right? He's still double digits, but like Christian Bezuidenhout is in the single digits. Sepp Straka, you can see right here, 11.6% owned, and he won here last year. And we've seen multiple times already this season, guys go out there and repeat, right? Go out there, become a multiple time champion there. I don't know. Sepp Straka is not really that type of player, but if people aren't going to own the past champion, a guy that's, I don't know, I think he's priced appropriately. Like in terms of talent level, I think he's in the right part of the board, like regardless of tournament. Now, considering that he's the returning champion, I think that's even more reasonable price tag. Okay, I'll take him, right? I mean, this guy finished in second place at TPC Southwind, right? The FedEx St. Jude, a damn playoff event. We had literally all of the world's best players, and he was able to finish in runner-up to Willie Z, right? In a playoff, have you? So, I mean, these kind of leverage plays are just no-brainers to me. If somebody's low-owned up here and if they have remotely any track record or remotely any kind of recent form going, like sign me up for him. Like JT Poston, I knew that would be the case, right? He's only 11% owned. I knew people would overlook him, right? Just based on the fact that you have Svenny, Johnny Vegas is getting a ton of ownership. I mean, like even guys like Pendrith and Dietrich are getting more attention than Poston. Like why, right? Poston, if anything, has a better track record than all of those players over the last year, and it's not close. Like it's not even remotely close. And even the recent form here, like he's still a top 20 recent form player, right? And sure, like these guys are in the low teens, a few of them. Like look at Svenny, right? He's 71 in recent form. So don't even get me started about him. Like he's not playing remotely well. If you look at the full picture of late, like why? Why is JT Poston the lowest owned? So like to me, the plays up top were really straightforward this week. And I honestly saw them on Monday. Like Billy Ho, I knew he would be low owned. I knew he's exactly what we thought it would be. Same thing there with JT Poston. The only annoying one here, the only potential change might be that Aaron Wise ownership. But as of right now, I've got 50% Aaron Wise in my lineup. So I've gone well over on him in anticipation of him potentially being 25% owned. But again, if anyone's going to come out of my player pool last second, it's probably him. So we talked about Sepp. A few pieces of chalk to keep an eye on. Johnny Vegas, I've got this like weird feeling about him. Just he's getting steamed up by everyone, kind of like Aaron Wise, that he might not just be like the 16, 17% owned that I'm projecting him for, but might be 20% owned plus. And if that's the case, it's an egregious play. I don't care if he has a decent track record. He hasn't really brought top end upside with it, right? And you're talking about an 8K range golfer. So just to show you what I'm talking about, he makes cuts, but do we care about a 42nd? Do we give a shit that he finished in 30th? Or 27th place there 3 years ago. Now 16th, okay, that's decent, right? But he's been 1 for 5 on that, right? And getting even remotely close to contention there in the 8K range. So like, just know what you're working with, right? You see these players that are going to be steamed up. You probably want to avoid them at a golf course with all this volatility. Let's catch up on chat, then hop into the 7K range. Let's see what's going on. Frank says, is there anything you can still play on Prize Picks? You're 24 hours late. Check the list. I'm sure there's a few things that haven't been bumped, like holes played, right? They can't bump that. So probably those. You like Seabez? I do too. So Seabez, I kind of glossed over it there quickly, but a similar ownership number to a Cameron Davis. And he plays difficult course as well. Like, especially when Christian was new to the tour, like he had this reputation that you play him when conditions are tough. Why isn't he chalk? He was like chalk as a 10K range golfer a couple years ago in this same kind of field. And now he's in the lower 8Ks, which I think is a fair price tag. Actually, I think he could probably be a 9K golfer, and I think it would be appropriate here. And he's a good skill set fit, and no one wants to get to him. So yeah, man, I'm gonna shut up now before I end up steaming him too much. But one of my favorite plays on the slate, to be quite frank with you, I didn't think he was going to be low owned. That's why I didn't talk him up as a core pick. Like, I don't know. I thought he'd be 15, 20% owned. Like that, I don't know. I was wrong there, and I'm glad I'm wrong, right? I'm glad no one else is playing him. Alejandro says you put 200 to make 75 plus. Oh, on Lowry, I have no idea the way that you're structuring that there at the front. So you're saying $1 to $2 bets for Lowry and Wise top 20. Sure. Again, I'm kind of confused by your comment there, man. So maybe restructure it and I'll be able to get back to you. That's just the way that you're putting the money down. I don't really get it. Rick Guy says, hey, Luke, long time. What's your DFS NBA going so far? Haven't played that much on NBA side. So we've been focusing a lot more on content, putting out golf stuff, and haven't had all the time to put into NBA. So it's been a slight casualty to the content making process, but is what it is. Been paying attention. If I decide to get back into it heavily, right, doing all that research, I still have my models and my tools there. So it might take me all of like 3 hours to get it all booted back up. But yeah, I haven't had that much of a chance recently just because of my schedule. Essentially, to play NBA DFS, you have to have like 5 p.m. through 10:30 p.m. every single night that you're playing free. You can't be doing anything then, right? That means you can't go out with friends, right? That means you can't do content. That means, like, at least for me, after I'm doing content during the day, I can't like sit back and just not do anything, right? Play video games, that sort of thing. So it's an investment to play NBA DFS. I'll say that. And if you half-ass NBA DFS, you're going to get your ass whooped by everyone that's doing it every day. That's for sure. Mark says, what are the chances of a Luke Donald top 10? I don't know, like plus 300, plus 400. That's probably like what it is on a sports book, right? He's played here over the last few years, but he hasn't been particularly good. Like, I know he's made a few cuts. Like, he finished T11 back there 3 years ago, but he misses the cut more than he makes it. And I know he looked decent last week. So that's where a lot of people are probably, and I've actually seen a lot of people ask about him this week. I know that's where a lot of people are getting this steam from, but I don't know. Like, if there's a course for him to play well, it's down here in South Florida. He's very familiar. There's plenty of houses down here, but I don't know. Like, he's probably like plus 300, plus 400, and I think that's probably about right. Gerg says, you like Kirk? He seems to like this course. He does. I would say the course history, if you look back a little bit further, it gets a little scratchy. Like, you get a few missed cuts, right? A few like 40th, 50th place finishes. But yeah, I mean, anytime you see somebody nearly win a golf tournament, especially because he just likes API, right? He plays well at the Players Championship too. You got to think maybe he just likes the agronomy down here. Maybe he just likes playing in Florida, whatever the case may be. Yeah, I like him too, Gerg. And a lot of it has to do with the history. Hey, Luke, awesome content. Poston and Webb or Vegas and Gordon. It'd be the first combo for me, but I'm not the biggest fan of Vegas. I'm not the hugest Webb guy. I'm playing Webb, truth be told, but he's a risky ass play. So I'll go with the first combo. Just know what you're getting into with Webb Simpson. But yeah, Vegas, I have to say, not my favorite play. But I mean, Will Gordon, I love, right? So if you're all over Vegas this week, then the second combo is just as solid as the first, because Will Gordon's one of my top plays of the week. Robbie says, so with Svensson, recent form, are you fading or playing? If I'll leave it to you to look on the Patreon. I can't give away the entire poll. Joseph says, this is more of a personal question. Was there anything specific you did in school to get you into all this data analytics and sports? Yeah, so I was an electrical engineer by trade. So I did a lot of, analysis on that side. I was more math oriented to begin with. Was already well into sports before that and sports betting. But by the time I got to a senior and I was getting really good at programming, it was a pretty straightforward, I would say, step for me, because I was thinking, I was like, okay, I could start to use numbers, right? Use modeling like I do for a lot of my golf stuff here to simplify fantasy sports, right? To save me time. So yeah, I would say the engineering kind of got me into it. And it wasn't really the engineering content, but more of the programming you have to do as an electrical engineer that took me in that direction, because I wasn't taking like higher level CS classes, but I learned 7 programming languages during college. And a lot of them, right, like Python, for example, C++, are highly applicable to data science and that sort of thing. So yeah, good question. So a lot of it was engineering based. Draftkings plus 100,000 odds if you can guess the top 5, top 10 combo. So you made 75 combinations. Makes more sense. So I see what you're saying now. Some include the winner. That's wild. Hey, I wish you the best of luck. That'd be insane. And yeah, I mean, if you go out there and you're trying to guess the top 5, yeah, they're going to give you some astronomical odds. I mean, it's like trying to get the superfecta, right? I think that's what they call it when you're going out there for a horse race, right? If you guess the top 5 finishers in a horse race, I know over there in Japan, or maybe it's China. Actually, I think it's China that does this. You win like some astronomical amount of money. Like it's like even more than like winning one of the massive Powerballs that you can. So yeah, not for me. I'll just say that. And those guys that were winning that put in like hundreds of thousands of entries. Jack Fisher says, don't know if it's been mentioned, but you have an each way cash bet on Willett, top 20 last week and top 3 in scrambling. Yeah, a lot of people seem to be on Willett. So he's kind of one of those DFS plays that I think might get a little bit more attention than people expect. But yeah, from that kind of market for the top 20, I have to agree with it because from the course fit, you got to like it. He plays well in the wind because he's over there from England. And I don't know, just play him decently, right? He's not doing anything flashy, right? He made the cut at Pebble too, to my detriment, actually. I had a bet on him to miss the cut at that event over there on Prize Pick. So it wasn't like I went out of my way to go out there and bet against Danny Willett. But yeah, I mean, sneaky pick. But hopefully it stays sneaky with all those people talking about him. But yeah, I won't be there. Would like to hear about Cam Davis in your core. Figured a guy that bogey so much wouldn't be hot at Honda. He's played well here before. So if you take a look at his track record, surprisingly, has played pretty decently here. And he's played decently at other short courses, like courses that you have to club down. Sorry, that's recent form over there. Let's go over here to event history. Get on the right tab. He's made the cut in all 3 trips, and he has, what, a 33rd, whatever. It's not that impressive. But top 10 finish there 3 years ago when he wasn't nearly the golfer that he is today. So he's shown that he can do it there. And Cameron Davis, like one of his big issues is driving accuracy, right? A lot of those bogeys that you speak of happen because he's missing off the tee. And at these shorter tracks, he lays up off the tee, right? He hits an iron off. I mean, I imagine that Cam Davis probably won't even have to hit 3-wood on a majority of the holes. He could probably just hit an iron off the tee. We'll have to see. He's out of form too. So he's a core pick for me as a pure leverage play. I knew that he would be super low owned, right? I knew that people would look at that form, right? Look at how he's playing and just say, I'm good on Cam Davis, right? I don't know. I look at the positive end of that because when he won at the Rocket Mortgage, he was coming in with similar form. Like, and the thing is, Cam Davis's form, like, I think people are kind of overblowing it. It's bad. It's not that bad. Like, you look at those shots gained, at least over the last 24 rounds, which is like cherry picking, like the worst possible stats you can get. He's been atrocious over the last 24 rounds. He's still gaining in the ball striking category. So I don't know. I feel like people overreact. Like he was always a volatile player. So it's not that surprising that he had a bad stretch. Just noticed tee times are at 5:50 your zone. Oh yeah. I'm not going to be there at 6:50. I can tell you that much. It's starting at 6:50 local. I'll probably get there around like 8:30 a.m. Just too early for me. Gus says, hi, good data like always. You have Sanjay, Lowry, Minwoo, Dietrich, and Denny to make the cut. No, they're all solid cut makers for sure. But one of those guys, I can almost guarantee you is going to miss the cut. That's just how it works up top. I hate those to make the cut parlays. I see so many people playing them this week. And honestly, I think if anything, this is like the week not to play those parlays. Like it's the most volatile week when it comes to making cuts because of all the water out there. I would be a much bigger proponent of playing these kinds of things literally any other week on tour. So ask me about them next week. I personally would avoid them this week. I don't think they're the sharpest bet, to be honest. Alejandro says you only have one pick in each category. Okay. I see what you're saying. So you're talking about that bet before. I'll look at that. That's interesting. I've never seen that before, Alejandro. That's cool. GameCube says it starts at 3:50 for those on the West Coast. Yeah, that's freaking brutal. You guys got to wake up in the middle of the night to make sure there's no withdrawals, which fingers crossed we don't have any, right? That's the most annoying thing in DFS. In terms of your 7K range, we're going to go through this quickly and then get into some lineups. A few players I want to point out. Danny Willett, decent. I know somebody talked about him before, but I prefer guys like Ryan Palmer. He's like essentially the same player, except that Ryan Palmer has elite course history. So if you go down here, you bring up Ryan Palmer, you'll see that he has a top 4 finish, has a top 20 there 3 years ago, and has played here like 10 times. So he makes a habit out of playing the course, clearly knows the strategy for playing it. And for a Texas guy like Ryan Palmer, we've seen him have a lot of his top-end performances at tough tracks like Memorial. I believe 2 years ago, finished in second place at the Memorial, or even it might even been last year. I know he has a second place at that course, though. It's one of my top 3 comps. And at other windy, like Texas tracks, right? You've seen Ryan Palmer have top-end finishes. And that's kind of what you're getting this week. I know it's not in Texas, but you're going to get those Texas type of wins and another difficult track, too. Still like Davis Riley. He's coming in way lower owned than he should. By the way, he's more just as likely, I would say, if not more likely to miss the cut than he is to finish top 25. But when Davis Riley finishes top 25, a lot of times it's a top 5 finish. So do with that what you will, right? He's got a lot of missed cut equity, but he might also crack the slate open. Still like SH Kim, he was again hitting lots of drivers today. So hopefully he's got that figured out. And there's not even that many driver holes around PGA National. So it's just kind of strange to see him hitting that club that often. But a great course fit, likes a difficult course. A player I wanted to point out was Grayson Sigg. I know somebody asked a question about him before. He plays these difficult tracks well. He's from over there at Sea Island, right? Plays at the course they play for the RSM Classic quite often. I saw him out there at the grocery store, actually, when I was over there at the RSM. But it wasn't the actual grocery store, it was a liquor store. I was trying to cover for him there, but it was the liquor store. But $7,200, like he's mispriced. Like he's the top of the 7K kind of guy, priced about $500 to $700 too cheap. There's a few other players that you can mix in here. I've heard a few people mention Sam Stevens. He's probably not the worst play. Callum Turan played well here last year at the Honda. Let's see. Aaron Baddeley. He hasn't played at the Honda very often, but he plays well on Bermuda, should play well at this kind of course. So maybe worth a few looks there. Ben Martin, he doesn't have a ton of recent form, but if you look back like 5 to 10 years ago, which I didn't know this about Ben Martin, I thought it was kind of funny. He's played this course a lot. He's made the cut every time he's come here. And I believe one of those finishes was a top 10 too. So like sneakily, I didn't even know that he played this course back in the day. Loves the course, apparently. Eric Cole's still a fantastic play. Again, I don't know if I was watching Pearson or Parker Cootie today. Either way, I'm not trying to be early on Pearson. I hear that he's the hell of a player. Has won multiple times on the Corn Ferry Tour, so you know that he's a stud. But I don't know. I've never seen him actually play it before. So I guess I'll get to see him this week, right? And make my own opinions about his game. But until then, I'm probably going to hold off. Maybe we'll play him for round 2 showdown, right? Maybe I'll get to see Cootie hit a few iron shots. Maybe it won't be the best score, but he hits the ball better than he scores. Maybe we'll jump on him then, right? But I don't know. We'll see him tomorrow before we make that decision. Akshay Bhatia, local kid, by the way. Didn't know that until today, which is kind of surprising. I know like almost all the local golfers down here, but grew up playing this golf course, and they said that this is his favorite course in the world. Now, I was thinking about playing Bhatia anyways, because over there in the Corn Ferry Tour, he missed his last 2 cuts, but before that, it was like 4 straight tops, 17 finishes, or something along that line. In terms of recent form, you can see that's kind of carrying him, right? He's number 7 in the field in terms of shots gained because of those top end finishes in the Corn Ferry. And though the level of competition is clearly lower, right? Clearly inferior compared to the PGA Tour, we've seen Bhatia. We've seen the talent level before. He saw him win over there in the Corn Ferry Tour. He's going to be one of the top 25 for next year to get his tour card. I don't know. I think he's worth a few shots on. So I'm not playing a ton of Bhatia. I have to say I have him in like 3% of lineups. So do with that what you will. But he likes the golf course, allegedly. You have guys like Satoshi Kodaira. A bunch of people seem to be playing him this week. So I kind of thought he was going to be like that 2% owned low and gem you could get to, but it doesn't really look like that, to be frank. Doc Redman, you have guys like David Lingmerth down here that are solid at shorter courses. Your options really thin out quickly. I mean, even Brian Stewart, right? He's played well at this course. You could take him in a few lineups. But you're not talking about anybody down here that you're going to invest in more than like 3% of lineups. Tyler Duncan stands out as a value play. Guys like Robert Streb do. And that's probably about it. I mean, down here in like the $6,300, $6,200 range, good luck trying to get these guys right. There's going to be probably 1 or 2 of them that ends up finishing in the top 20, but you probably don't need them anyways to win the golf tournament, to win the GPPs, unless they finish top 5, right? Unless they're giving you that truly top-end performance, which there might be one guy down here that ends up getting to a top 5 performance, and they might end up being like 0.1% owned or even less than that in the large field GPP, which again could just be completely negligible, might not even matter at the end of the day. So I don't know, pick your spots down here. Like Robert Streb, he's like one guy I want to point out down here in the $6,400 range. He loves himself a Nicklaus course, whether it's over there. One of the Sea Island courses is a Nicklaus course. He plays well, I believe Harbour Town's not a Nicklaus course, but there's a few other Nicklaus courses on the schedule that he has solid course history at. He's kind of known for that. And even at this course, he's had a few top end finishes. And though he's mixed in a few missed cuts, it's Robert Schreb, right? You're getting what you're paying for. The one thing that's worth noting is that he's really good in the wind. We've seen him go out there before, and like at the RSM Classic, he's done it 2 of the last 5 years. He's gone out there and he's been the first round leader on the South course there. Sorry, not the South course, the Seaside course over there at the RSM Classic, which is the harder of the 2 courses. And he's been first round leader, and it's been super windy. It's been like 20, 25 mile an hour wind gusts. The 2 years it was like that, he was your first round leader. So down here in Florida, where you get those tropical kind of winds, he might be worth taking. And it's another Nicklaus redesign, right? He didn't design the course. It was a Fazio design, but all of the influence of Nicklaus with the redesign, I don't know. It's enough to get me there, right? At a 0.3% owned player. I mean, you put him in 1% of your lineups even, and that's going to be leverage to the field, let alone if you go with maybe like 3% like I did, that's 10x the field, right? That's all the leverage that you need. Let's go up to the top of the board. We're going to go through a few DFS lineups together here in a second, so hold tight. Let's see what we've got going down in chat. Actually, I skipped a few. Let's go back. I don't want to skip any of your questions down there. Let's see. So Anointed says, I know you value long-term stats on players for your picks, for sure, but what rationale do you use by playing a lot of the guys that project low-owned but not in current form? So what kind of rationale? Good question. So the longer-term stuff is the main way that I do so. So you hit the nail on the head there, but on top of that, course fit, right? So if a guy is in form, a lot of times they can play well at a course that they're not necessarily fit for, right? Because the irons are so on point, whatever the case may be the off the tee play, might be the putter, right? Might just be making everything, right? And pretty much no matter what course you're on, if you're just making all your putts, you're probably going to play well. So recent form is obviously nice to have, but if somebody doesn't have that form, you more want to look for skill set, right? Guys that fit the course, that maybe bounce back. And I'm thinking like Jordan Spieth over there at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am a few years ago. He ended up finishing runner-up to Tom Hoagie, coming in with pretty dog shit form. Hadn't really done anything, but he was the perfect course fit guy, right? The recent form wasn't really there, right? He was, again, I think he'd missed like half of his cuts coming into that, but at that event, his course history was elite. So I would say course history, course fit, that kind of thing are what I rely on to do so. And yeah, you never want to like blindly take somebody. So like with Cam Davis, for example, I think he's a good example of this. I'm willing to take him because he's out of form, because he's had success here before, right? Because he's gone out there and finished in the top 10, because the skill set makes enough sense to me, right? Now, if he didn't check enough boxes, right, I wouldn't make that play. For example, let's find another out of form player I'm going with. Like if you wanted to play Webb this week, right? You have to ask yourself, if he turns it around, right? If he starts hitting the ball like Webb Simpson typically does he have a chance to win here, right? And you can say definitively yes, because he's nearly won this event multiple times. So think about those kind of things. Alejandro says, Sepp Straka top 20. Nobody's talking Sepp. Yeah, I like him. You mean he's won here before, right? I kind of talked before about how he nearly won over there at TPC Southwind there for the FedEx St. Jude. Yeah, I think that he's going way under the radar. And typically, like your past year's champion, at least gets a little bit of respect, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like a lot of people are just kind of rushing Sepp off. But he's had a few other top-end finishes in between, so he's not like a one-hit wonder. So yeah, I like the play a lot too. Top 20, probably a pretty decent bet. You're happy they're back on the East Coast for sure. You don't have to deal with all that late night shit out there where we're having rounds go into the next day. Speaking of, the round 2 through 4 streams will be at night, but they're going to be a little bit later, right? I've got to get home from the course. I've got to refresh. I've got to go out there, actually do my projections. So we're probably looking at going live at like 9:30, 10 p.m. there for rounds 2 through 4. So it's going to be a little bit late, but we'll make do. It's much better than the alternative over there on the West Coast where we had events, going into the next day. That was rough. Setting your alarm at 3:30. Geez. Yeah, that's rough for those withdrawals. Damon says early tee times might suck for DFS, but man, do you love up waking late and seeing 9 holes played. It's great, except when you wake up, they're 9 holes in and they're like +6. Then you feel like you're dreaming and you want to go back to sleep. Daniel says, any Florida narratives that you're over the field on? Not really. I have to say, I liked the fact that Eric Cole's from Florida. He wasn't born in Florida, but he went to Nova Southeastern University, which is about 30 minutes from PGA National. So you'd have to figure that, a golfer that played in college of his pedigree probably played there a bunch. So not really, though, Daniel. I guess it's nice for Eric Cole. Jack says, lots of love for Sanjay, but on the other 2 Koreans, SH and Benny An. Yeah, I'm with you on those. Lots of people want to play Sanjay, but you've got SH out there, Benny An. An won a similar track in the Korn Ferry tournament. Yeah, he's played well here too. He has 2 top 5 finishes. Actually, I think one of them was like a 6th place finish, but you get the point, right? 2 top end quality finishes at the Honda Classic. Yeah, I'm there with you. And I don't know. I don't hate Sanjay. I have to say this, guys. Like, I feel like everyone's saying that they're fading Sanjay. So, like, there are other people that have him at like 40% owned. I don't think he's going to be 40% owned. I even think that the 30% mark I have him at might even be a little bit high, just based on the amount of people I see going like, oh, I'm not going to play Sanjay this week. So I agree with you, Jack. I'm not going to be playing him, right? But don't think that I'm hating on Sanjay. He could easily win this golf tournament. He's more than capable. Anointed says, what kind of value do you give to local players? Not much. I'd say if you're trying to break a tiebreaker, go for it. Kind of like the weather edge there. But yeah, not too much, man. It's a lot more about just trying to find the guys that are the best players, that are underpriced, and that are low owned. Those things are a lot more important. Sean says, people are going to wish they played more Minwoo. Maybe they might. I have to say that I don't think that he's super low owned. As of my last projection run, he's higher owned than a Horschel. He's just about the same kind of ownership as like your Kuchers, Denny McCarthy's of the world. I would be there in Minwoo, and I think a lot more people would be if the ownership was a little bit more realistic. He's number 1 in my recent form ranking, but we have to, keep in mind that all of those starts are over there on the European Tour. So I like him this week. I think he'll play ball. He looked decent on the range. He was striping his irons, but it's a hard sell for me when he's going to be chalk, when he's going to be one of the top 5 highest owned players on the slate. That's just a hard sell for me. But like kind of like Moronka last week, if you were giving me a low owned DP World Tour player that I know is a quality, probably at least an 8K range golfer, then I'll be in on it. But he's $9,400 and he's chalk. So not so sure. Yeah, it is a Crown and Coke. And it's once again in another goblet glass because all my freaking whiskey glasses broke. And I've yet to replace them yet. So yeah, good call on that, CV. It absolutely is. Joseph says, thoughts on a Minwoo Lee not having any PGA Tour action. So kind of just gave my thoughts. I like the play. Like if you have the space, by all means, go out there and play him, right? Quality player. But there are guys I just like more. Like most notably, Billy Horschel, right? Almost all of the exposure I'd want to give to Minwoo is going to my extra exposure on Billy because Billy is my highest exposed play on the slate, at least when it comes to leverage. I have a little bit more Aaron Wise, but when it's coming to the actual multiplier there, Billy's like one of my biggest stands. Like I think that he's a much better player than the guys around him. And honestly, I don't care about the recent form. Like when we know who somebody is, like we see guys snap out of form just out of nowhere, right? Lee Hodges last week, like 5 straight missed cuts, goes out there and nearly wins the golf tournament, or at least through the first 2 rounds was looking like it. Peter Malnati, right, had been absolute dog shit until like 3-4 weeks ago, had missed like 7 of 8 cuts, and now is like finishing top 25 every single week, right? Like, I don't know. When you know who some of these guys are, like I slightly prefer that. And Minwoo, we kind of don't know who he is, right? Like Minwoo's kind of, I think even like the DP World Tour hardos out there, and I've been watching a lot more of the DP World Tour, I've been following it a lot more of late, would even say that he's still an unknown prospect, right? You don't really know how he's going to fare out there. Even though he's played so well overseas, has like, I think it's like 5 straight top 17 finishes, just outstanding stuff. Even those kind of people have to say they don't know how it's going to go this week, right? So like if he's higher owned than Billy Horschel, like that's egregious to me. That's not my favorite play. Let's just say that. So I don't want to shit on him too much, but like I said, it's all relative. Joshua says thoughts on Tano Goya. Let's smash the like button. Agreed. I love when people do the plugs for me. Like I said, the thoughts on Tano Goya. the recent form is surprising. I think a lot of people don't give him the credit he necessarily deserves. And let me go ahead and bring those metrics up for you. So where is he? He's way cheaper than he should be too. I had to have passed him. There's no chance he's that cheap. So let me find good old Tano. Do I not have him on my sheet? I don't think I have him on my spreadsheet. Wow, he's in the field, right? He has to be, because I've heard people talk him up this week. All right, I didn't know that. I counted up and I have all the players in there. So that means that there's either a duplicate on there, or maybe he's just not. He's probably just not on the shots gained section. So it makes more sense. Thoughts on Tanagoya? I need his ownership number. So let me double check where he's on the pricing. He's got to be on here. Maybe the Control F wasn't working. That's what I'm thinking it is, because I counted the last time we were on here and we had all the players on the player pool. So let's double check on that. Tanagoya is $6,600. So make it a little easier to find it there. Where are we at? Yeah, obviously. I was like, unless there was a duplicate player on there, and I've literally gone through every person on this sheet and changed like all the metrics, all my player pools. That would have been very frustrating, but no, he's there. Let me find his ownership number. Let me bring up my other spreadsheet and give you the exact number on him. So $6,600. Like I said, he's had a few top end finishes of late, and his ownership number, at least as of my last run, is 0.6%. So you're looking at essentially no one getting to him. Yeah, count me in, man. Definitely seems like a solid low end play. That's hilarious you say that, because you swear on nights you go to bed with all the big bets. You have dreams where they all blow up. Maybe it's a sign. Yeah. That's usually how it works. It's like I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, I gotta take Aaron Wise out of my lineups. That happens. Novak this week, fellas. Thank you later. I'm there too, actually, Barry. I'm there with you. Cheers. Absolutely. Does every player play in the Pro-Am? No, they don't. Good question, Matthew, because I actually have a comment to make about that. Thomas Dietrich was just walking the course today with his Pro-Am group. He wasn't playing with them, which has to be frustrating for the other Pro-Am guys. But he literally just had, I think it was his caddy with him. He didn't have his bag, and he just had his analytics book. And I guess it was probably his yardage book too that he had with him. And I asked him, he was standing there to the side while the Pro-Am guys were hitting, and he didn't have his clubs. I was like, Thomas, you good? And he looked at me. He looked around. I was like, yeah, Thomas, are you good? And he's like, yeah. I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, you don't have your clubs with you. I was like, this is your Pro-Am group. And he shakes his head. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I literally asked him. I was like, is this guy hurt? Like, I mean, that's what I thought, right? Like, he's just walking with the Pro-Am group. I was like, what's going on? He's like, oh, no. I'm not playing today. I'm just scouting the course. So he's never played here before, Matthew. I'm thinking that's what it was. But no, apparently they don't all play. They don't all get tee times for it, I guess. I mean, they only put out one pro in a group. So it's like one pro with like 5 or 6 amateurs, or 4 or 5, something like that. I can't imagine they can fit them all in the course. So I don't think they all play. And in Dietrich's case, he scared the shit out of me for a second. I thought he was injured, but he was just checking out the course, doing his analytics, as he said. $6,600. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's because I had an entire row selected and I did Control F. So it was only searching in that row. Happens sometimes. When Daily Sports mentioned your expertise in course knowledge. I appreciate that. Nice. I didn't know that. I've got to check them out. I didn't see that. That's cool. Okay. Robbie says, any Moronk type plays this week? I guess it would be Minwoo, right? Or going back to Moronk, honestly. But they're kind of getting some steam. In this 7K range, there's not really any of those DP World Tour players. I guess except for Padraig Harrington. Harrington's at play this week, Robbie, because Harrington's been playing well on the DP World Tour. He's won this event before. So a lot of people don't give him the credit for that he deserves. Yeah, I'd say Harrington, but he's also getting some attention. Just if it feels like this week, all of the hardcores are going to play fantasy. So when I was running my ownership projections, I had to account for DP World Tour form a little bit more than most. It's why Minwoo Lee is getting the ownership that he is because you're getting a much sharper crowd this week than I think you're going to get most weeks on the PGA Tour. So, and that's just a byproduct of the field, right? Like, you're not going to get that casual golf fan to play DFS for the Honda. Like, you'll get a few of them, right? But you're not going to get those NFL fans that are like, ooh, Tiger Woods is playing this week, right? And they go over there and play DFS. None of those kind of guys are going to play Minwoo Lee. They're not going to play Padraig Harrington either. But on this kind of event, this kind of field, unfortunately, I think people are. So, yeah, it would probably be Harrington. That'd be the the Moronk type play this week. David says Aaron Wise is your play along with Ann and Griffin. That's going to be Chalk City. I like all three of them. I'm playing all three, David, but that's going to be Chalk City. I don't know if I'd play all three together. So just be careful there. Speaking of, let's go ahead and talk through lineup construction. So we're going to bring up Draftkings, make a few lineups together, give you an idea of how to handle the lineup making process. And as we typically do on this section, let's start with a look at cash. So the types of plays I'd be going to in cash. I kind of mentioned before, I think Sungjae Im is a must play. I think you could go the Sungjae Lowry route. Now that's going to put you at $7,200, which is sub-ideal for a cash lineup. So I think the more, I'd say, straightforward start, or the one that's maybe just a little bit easier to pull off, is starting with the Sungjae Im and then an Aaron Wise. Outside of that, you're left with 7,500. So you're probably going down to this bottom tier, the 8K. A lot of the plays here aren't that consistent. So maybe you just start with the Ben Griffin, right? He's kind of a no-brainer cash play this week. Aaron Rai is one of the most consistent players on tour. He's kind of like one of my cash cornerstones I typically get to. So like he's a no-brainer play in this kind of lineup, and you're left with 72.5 remaining. So it's I don't know. Just take some chalk down here. Maybe you differentiate with your last two spots. Grayson Sig, again, I mentioned him as one of those consistent cut makers. You get the idea here. So in cash, I would say these top three would be nearly like locks for cash. Like I think that Ben Griffin, Sungjae Im should be in every single cash lineup that you're making this week. And then either one of a Lowry or somebody like an Aaron Wise. In terms of your GPP lineups, this is where all the strategy comes in, right? When you're playing cash, you just take the best plays, you jam in as many of them as humanly possible. You try and take a little bit of extra chalk too. But when we're playing in GPP contest, right, against 70,000 other entries, or even in this $20 version, where you're playing against nearly 60,000 entries, you got to think about ownership. And I know we had questions before about starting in the lower 9K range. I'm more than fine with it, right? So let's take Aaron Wise. He's like the one chalky play this week as of right now that I have a ton of, right? Him and Ben Griffin, I'd say. They're both going to be relatively high owned. I have a bunch of those too. Let me show you how I'd build a lineup with both of them in a lineup. So if I'm using both of those guys together, we're really cornering ourselves into like a 20-25% owned play, 15 to 20% owned play there with Ben Griffin. We got to think about leverage. So for our third man in, we're going to probably be looking at a top of the 8K, maybe a lower 9K golfer. We don't want to take somebody that's going to be highly owned, right? So like a D-Tree, right? He's like 16% owned. Same thing with Denny McCarthy. We ideally really want to take a pivot. So this is where I like Poston, right? Who's going to be like 10, 11% owned. This is where I like the Sepp Strakas of the world. That's going to be close to 10% owned, even as the returning champion, to try and counterbalance the higher ownership up top. Because not only do we want to avoid duplications, we also want to make sure that we're getting that leverage to the field to move our lineups up the leaderboard. So this is the kind of thought process I'm going through. Now, if I'm going to be a little bit less chalky up top, perhaps let's start a lineup out here with, let's put Cooch in there. Let's go ahead and put Dietrich in as our second man up top. Now, similar kind of skill set, right, between the two players, but now I'm a lot more comfortable to take slightly chalkier players. So perhaps maybe we take a Pendrith, right? Let's add Pendrith to this kind of lineup, right? He's going to be like 15% owned, but I'm willing to take another 15% owned guy when we don't have the mega chalk like a Sungjae in there, or an Aaron Wise, who again might be one of those super high owned plays. Down in the 7K range, if you wanted to take, Ben Griffin, you could probably get away with it in this kind of lineup just because you're not jamming in chalk after chalk after chalk. Now, something to note is that all of these guys are still going to be like 15% owned. So it's not like you're talking about mega pivots there, but still probably a lineup, or at least, especially if I end this off with like two lower owned plays. Like if Davis Riley is going to be one of the picks here, if we were to round it off with, let's say, like a sub 5% owned player, which there's one of them that we talked up on stream here at $7,400 that you could take, that kind of lineup would be a lot more okay with, right? Even though you have, the lowest ownership here, right, is going to be like Davis Riley, and he's like 8-9% owned. But because you're not taking those 25% owned players, you can get away with it. Now let's go into the prop side. So we'll go over any questions down in chat about DFS, and then we're going to talk about props. So if you were looking for those, that's what we're about to get into. We have, let's see. Anointed says Harrington just got voted to the Hall of Fame, so his mindset should be very confident. Yeah, it might help. Might be a little bit of a distraction too, though. So it's hard to say, but definitely has played well of late. The play on the DP World Tour is enough to get there on its own. So I think he's a decent play. Minwoo or McCarthy? It's McCarthy for me. We're below. Okay. that's a name I haven't heard in a while. I know the shots gained on him are a lot better than people think. So let me look. I'm not going to play him. I can tell you that much, but I want to see what you're looking at there. So yeah, I can't do it, bro. He's losing 2 strokes around with ball striking. I can't do it. Hey, he's going to be like 0.1% owned. Minhu. Hey, Minji Lee is even better than her brother. So I've heard that Minji and Minwoo, when they play, Minji kicks his ass. So it doesn't surprise me at all. Absolutely love the show. Thank you for the golf DFS, of course. You're calling me the golf DFS ninja. I love it. Maybe we'll make that a new nickname. Peace out, man. Hopefully you have a good week here. So let's go through props. If you're heading out of here, you were here for the DFS side. I appreciate you guys, of course. As always, good best of luck, right? Go out there, take home a GPP, report back after you win. Would love to see it. Would love to see you guys at the top of those leaderboards, and hit the like button on your way out too. So if you're heading out of here, peace out. But let's get into this prop stuff. So we're not only going to get through prize picks, we're going to go through underdog too. Now I did a whole video on this, so we're not going to do the whole spiel again here. Mostly just going to focus on questions. But something worth noting is they may end up adding props tomorrow. So they've done it the last few weeks. You've seen it the day of the event. They add a lot of like the in-hole props. So if there's going to be one of the par 4s, like I'm thinking hole 10, they might do like an over under 4.5 strokes, because sometimes the bogey rate on that hole is like 40%. And if they put like lower tier players, that's a prop category I could see them putting up. Stay tuned for all of that tomorrow. So there could be edges to be had. But the pricing at this point, because there's been so many bumps, is not the best. But a few that you can still take, they still have Harris English up there at 70 strokes. Now, they bumped a lot of the birdies down, which makes sense. That's where they should be. They had a lot of them at 3.5, where I took the under on them, and now they're down at 3. Greens regulation, they also bumped a whole lot of the board down. I ended up having Harris English and Bazane but I know somebody before was asking about, these green and regulation props. Just find somebody that's losing on approach coming in and hammer their under here. So like I would avoid Kuchar because he's playing really well, but like Cameron Davis has not been hitting his irons well of late, right? So like I wouldn't blame you for taking an under on him. Let's see. Even like Sanjay at 12, I have to say this. I didn't end up taking this and I kind of regretted it at this point. He's not hitting 13 greens in regulation. Like 13 greens in regulation around this course is like unheard of. And I still think he has a decent chance to push. Like you got to like your chances for the under. So there's still spots of value to be had there. I'll keep those 2 on there for now. In terms of your holes played, Eric Van Rooyen is minus 188 to make the cut. In fact, let me find the exact odds. Honda Classic to make the cuts. There we go. Alrighty. Let me make sure I didn't unplug my mic. We're good. Alrighty. Let me show you guys what I'm working with here, okay? Alrighty. So this is the to make the cut odds, right? Now, I was looking at this the other day, and they were pretty ridiculous. Let's find this. Eric Van Rooyen, right? Minus 188 to make the cut, and that's the best odds that you can find, right? You have Webb Simpson down here, right? He's minus 150, right? Which is towards the bottom of this board, but they're 50-50 props over here on Prize Picks. So, like, I stand behind these completely. And one thing that's worth noting, my personal projections aren't nearly as bullish on Webb Simpson's chances of making the cut here, but that's due to his recent form. So like that's understandable, but the book's clearly a little bit more bullish about that. So I personally like the EVR a little bit more than the Webb Simpson one, not only because of the minus 188 versus the minus 150 line that you have there, but also because my personal projections prefer that side too. So I would say these 3 would be like my top 3 props left at this point. I hate matchups. Again, if you've been here for a while, you know this. It's not anything different, right? But I don't know. If you have any questions about matchups, throw them down in chat. I'm willing to go over them, but just not my favorite board. And I just never bet them. Like if I bet a matchup, it's because there's a massive difference in talent gap. Perhaps there's an injury concern. Or last night, I played a bunch of Billy Horschel props because he was matched up against Alex Noren. And of course, he withdrew from the event. So I used the Billy Horschel to get rid of all the multipliers. So essentially, if you didn't know this, by the way, I'm going to let you know now. If somebody withdraws from the golf tournament, you can play props in your cards and get rid of the multiplier, right? So like, just to give you an idea here, right? If you took another fade, really made this like a fade card. I don't like this prop, by the way. I'm just putting it in here to show it to you. You're only going to get, actually, why is the payout? Oh, it's because we have this holes played in there. But let's assume that we were taking the under instead, right? They screw your payout, right? A flex only pays 4x. A power play would only pay 6x. But let's say that you found one of these matchups that's going to be a DMP and you put it in there and he DMPs, then you're going to get the normal payout structure. So it'll say you're only getting 6x over here, but when it actually goes to pay you out money, you're going to get 10x. You're going to get the normal payout structure that you would for a regular 5-leg. So keep that in mind. If you're ever looking at the board, you're trying to look for withdrawals, let me go ahead and add these props back in here, the ones that I thought were the best still on the board. And let's go over some of those questions in chat. Let's see what's going on. Joseph says, if you have free time and are willing, could you ask some questions via social media, like your job just got admitted to university and heavily debating statistics? Absolutely. Yeah. So just follow me on Twitter. Shoot me a tweet if I don't follow you and you can't DM me. And absolutely, man. Statistics, great field to get into. I would say you could go into an auxiliary field like engineering, accounting, right? Those kind of other math-based fields. And also kind of get your foot in the door for the kind of thing I'm doing. So if that's the question, go ahead. Feel free to ask for sure. But yeah, that's a great field to get into. Anything math related these days, especially if you have an acumen for it. Just this skill set is so translatable. It's like if I wanted to, I could go be an engineer right now, tomorrow, if I needed to, right? I still have my degree, I have all my certifications. If I wanted to take that, go into programming, I could do that too. If I want to do sports analysis, right? Doing modeling, statistical modeling for a living like I am now, can do that too. So I'm always going to support people that are going into the STEM field, whether it's for statistics, whether it ends up being like my brother's case, he goes for accounting over there. Just, it's very translatable. David says, thank you, of course. Make sure you hit the like. You guys are helping me out. Appreciate that. You meant to remove the Harrington content. You need to win, just bought a house. Okay. I'm not sure if it helps him or hurts him, right? Carson says Webb under GIR. Okay, let's take a look at it. Who is it? A 10? What is he? 11 now? Yeah. So he was at 11.5. If you caught him at 11.5, that was like one of the best props on the board. But one thing I'll say about that, to kind of counteract that, is he gained 4 strokes last time he played on approach. So he may have figured something out with the irons. Ideally, I want somebody coming in that's maybe lost strokes on approach in like 2-3 straight events. Not the case with Webb. But before that, right, if you throw away that one performance, he's been utter dog shit on approach. So like I can show you over here. Let me share my screen, show you the projections. I mean, look at these numbers for Webb. They're not pretty, particularly outside of approach. He's been like even worse than everything else. So where you at, good old Weber? Now we passed him, right? He's super cheap because he's been so bad, right? Losing in all 4 stat categories. That's just, hey, yeah, I get the fade. That's for sure. I just wish you would have gone at 11.5. That would have been an even better play. I didn't even get it at 11.5. I was late to the party there. Let's see what else is going on in chat. Todd says, if you had $100 free roll, who would you put it on outright? Billy Horschel. He was my first bet this week. He's one of the larger bets I've placed all year, which is just such a bad idea for the Honda Classic, but I had to bet it out of principle. They had a disrespectful number out on my boy Billy Ho, and I nuked that crap. Joseph says, I'm not understating when I say I appreciate you answering your questions. Of course, you're a good man. I'm looking out. Yeah, absolutely looking out. I wish I had people telling me the same kind of stuff when I was in college. So especially if it's like on the personal, professional side, I like those questions even more. I feel like there's not enough info out there about that kind of stuff. So especially, at least for me, like growing up, I grew up in a single parent household. I didn't have somebody to really give me a lot of information. So if I'm able to relay that forward, it's the least I could do. All right. So I appreciate everybody stopping by. consuming the content as you guys all do. I'm super excited to get out there on the course tomorrow. If you guys haven't already hit that like button, make sure you do so. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I'd highly recommend you do so you don't miss any of the content in the future. We'll be going live for rounds 2 through 4. Like I said, a little bit later than usual, at least a little bit later than I'd like, because I'll be out there on the course, right? Gotta bus home, gotta, like I said, refresh and get the projections done. But we'll be going live, so make sure to check out the Twitter if you don't already follow me on there. I post all the start times on there. If you're on the Patreon, you're on the Discord, I'll be posting the start times there too. But looking forward to it. We'll be able to see a lot of the action in person. So much like we saw the course today, I'll be able to give you guys scouting reports on how players were striping the ball out there, how their attitudes held up, that sort of thing. Because when you get to a difficult track, a player's attitude, a player's actions, behavior in between shots can tell you almost just as much about their actual play and the shots gained metrics. Because if somebody's frustrated, really working on their game out there, you don't want to be taking them at a hard track, right? Because you're already battling the elements. If you're battling the elements and yourself, your own mind, not the best situation. You've seen a lot of ejections in the past from those sort of players. So I'll be keeping my eye on all of that. But like I said, best of luck. Thank you guys for stopping by, showing all the love that you guys do on the channel. I appreciate you. And let's see if there's any questions. Damon says, Kirk, over 69. I had his over 68.5. So yeah, I like that. Hope says, what are a couple of your favorite plays in the 7K range to miss the cut? Lee Hodges and Nick Hardy. I'll say those two. And Damon says, if it's not too late, are you going to review the whole locations? Yeah, let's look at those. All right, I'm not in any hurry to get out of here. So let's do that. Let me bring up Twitter. Let me bring up the PGA website, and we'll do that. Yeah. I did my whole spiel, so if you're getting out of here, peace out. But hey, if you want to look at the whole locations, I'm going to give you what you guys want. So let's go. This is my first look at them too, so give me a second to process this, okay? Contrary to popular belief, I can't just spit out analysis immediately. I'm not a computer yet. when we get the chips built in, when Elon gets the built-in computer chips, maybe we can start with the instant analysis. But for now, we're constricted by human factors. Let's see what's going on. So you said, yeah, the pin on 18's to the right side. Yeah, I would expect most people to lay up there, so that's good to know. It's also going to play into the wind. Let's look at 5 and 7. So 5's a front left pin. It's going to play downwind. So I could see people getting close to 5, but that would bring the water into play. And then they have 7 playing as long as humanly possible because it's playing downwind. So looks like they're trying to account for the wind, right? Like they made 7 more difficult. 5, that front pin right downwind, it's going to be hard to get it close. I think you'll get a few people that get it close, but like you're going to have to hit it on the front edge, right, to get it to stop by the hole there. And look what's right in front of that green, right? The freaking lake to the left. So yeah, I like our par 3 props even more now, actually, especially with those pins. Let's look at 15 and 17. So 15's towards that bunker. That's a hard pin. Believe it or not, I think I'd rather have the pin in the back right than over there next to the bunker. That bunker shot, if you end up missing in there, is impossible to get up and down. In fact, there's going to be a bunch of people that miss there tomorrow and chip into the lake. So look forward to that. That's going to happen a bunch tomorrow. I can guarantee you that at least like 5, maybe even 10 people end up hitting it into the water with their second shot, let alone the amount of people that hit it into the water off the tee. And then 17's about as easy a pin you get, but like, I don't know. It's still a difficult hole, still exposed to the wind, still got all of the water there as well to contend with. So yeah, I'm excited for it. All right. That's all we've got, boys. Going to go ahead and end the stream there. Already have my lineups done, so it's going to be an early night for me. I'm not going to be there at 6:50 a.m., so I'll tell you guys that much. I'll probably get there at like 8:30. So we'll have an idea for conditions on ESPN+. I'll be able to check the weather, make sure I don't need any rain gear, and hopefully we see some solid action out there tomorrow. I'll be on 17 for most of the day, so if anyone's going to be out there, feel free to come by and say hi if you see me out there. But I'll mostly be at 17. I have access to that bear trap, so if I'll just be posting up, it'll likely be at that section. But I'll also be walking the course too. So if you see me out there, say hi. I'm willing to buy you a beer. Hey, if you buy me a round, I'll buy you a round out there too. And let's have ourselves a week. Best of luck, guys. I'll see you guys for the showdown streams.